You have 1 hour. Take your things and leave.
Some men make the mistake of their lives in a single sentence. Kevin Carter made his on a Tuesday morning in February, standing in the kitchen of the house his wife had helped him pay for, holding a garbage bag that contained everything he had decided she was worth. 11 years reduced to something that could be carried in one hand. He placed the bag in front of her and told her she had 1 hour to leave. He told her she was lucky he wasn't asking her to pay him back for the time he believed she had wasted. Another woman sat at the table, eating breakfast that had been bought with money from a life Kevin was already erasing. He watched his wife take the bag. He watched her walk to the door. And when she didn't cry, when she didn't argue, something about that silence unsettled him in a way he couldn't explain. He thought he had won something in that moment. But he was wrong, because silence is not always defeat. Sometimes it is a decision. What Kevin didn't see, because he had already turned away, was his wife sitting in her car in the driveway for 4 minutes. Not crying, not breaking, thinking. Then she drove away. 3 years later, she came back. Not to him, not to that house. She came back to the city and bought the building his company operated from. Then she raised the rent. And that was only the part of the story Kevin was forced to see. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Now here is where most people get it wrong. They think that moment in the kitchen was the beginning of everything. It wasn't. It was the end. The end of a version of Angela that Kevin had already stopped seeing long before that morning. Because people don't suddenly become invisible. It happens slowly, through dismissal, through assumption, through the quiet habit of no longer paying attention. And Kevin had stopped paying attention a long time ago. The kind of man Kevin was had been shaped by success. He had built his business from nothing, grown it into something stable, something respected, something that made him believe he understood how everything in his life worked. And that belief was his first mistake. Because somewhere along the way, Kevin stopped noticing the difference between what he had built and what had been built for him. Angela Carter had never needed attention to function. She had grown up in a household where nothing was guaranteed, where every dollar mattered and every decision had consequences. She learned early how to observe, how to calculate, and how to prepare. By the time she met Kevin, she had already built something for herself. A career, a reputation, a way of thinking that valued structure over noise. When she married Kevin, she didn't step into his life as someone dependent. She stepped in as someone capable. But capability, when it is quiet, is often ignored. And over time, what Angela brought into that marriage became something Kevin no longer recognized as valuable because it didn't demand recognition. She managed his finances, quietly, precisely. She corrected inefficiencies he never noticed, reduced costs he never tracked, strengthened margins he later credited to growth. And that is where the shift began. Because when contribution becomes invisible, it doesn't disappear. Is simply ignored. And once something is ignored long enough, it becomes easy to believe it was never important in the first place. But here is what Kevin never stopped to ask. If Angela was doing all of that for his business, what else was she capable of doing for herself? Then something changed. Not suddenly, not dramatically, quietly. 2 years before that Tuesday morning, Angela started studying again. Not out of boredom, not as a distraction, but with purpose. Commercial real estate, acquisition, property strategy. She found a mentor, someone who had spent decades building what Angela was now beginning to understand. And every night, while Kevin believed nothing was happening, Angela was building something. Page by page, deal by deal, plan by plan. And Kevin never asked. That was his second mistake. And this is where the story shifts. Because while Kevin was slowly reducing Angela in his mind, Angela was increasing herself in reality. By the time that Tuesday morning arrived, Angela was not starting from nothing. She was already prepared. The garbage bag didn't break her. It removed the delay. Angela sat in that car for 4 minutes. And in those 4 minutes, everything that mattered was decided. Not emotionally, strategically. She wasn't asking why this happened. She was asking what she would do next. And that question is the difference between people who stay where they are and people who change everything. She drove to Louisville, not to hide, to reset. She sat down that same morning, opened her laptop, and reviewed the plan she had already built. Nothing needed to change except the timeline. She made one call. Her mentor answered, and that was the moment the plan became real. 8 months later, she bought her first property. Not because it was easy, because she refused to go back. It was small. It was controlled. It was exactly what it needed to be. She managed every detail, every negotiation, every decision, and it worked. Not dramatically, but correctly. And correctness builds something most people underestimate: confidence. The second property came next. Larger, more visible, this time in Nashville, the same city she had been forced to leave, the same city Kevin still believed he controlled. But this time, Angela wasn't adjusting. She was executing, and people started to notice. Not Kevin, others, lenders, brokers, investors. Because consistency has a way of making itself impossible to ignore. But Kevin still didn't see it. And that matters. Because what happens next only works if he doesn't see it coming. The third acquisition established her. The fourth changed everything. Kevin's building had been on her radar long before it ever hit the market. That wasn't luck. That was preparation. She had tracked it, studied it, understood its value before anyone else paid attention. And when the opportunity came, she moved fast, faster than anyone else in the room. The deal closed in just over a month. The rent increase was normal, legal, expected. Kevin received a notice like every other tenant. And for a moment, it was just business, until he saw the name. And that was the moment everything caught up with him. Because Kevin wasn't reacting to a rent increase. He was reacting to the truth. That everything he believed about Angela was wrong. That the woman he dismissed had been building something the entire time. That the silence he thought meant weakness was discipline. He called her. She answered. The conversation lasted 11 minutes. He asked her why, and her answer was simple. She didn't do any of it for him. And that is where most people misunderstand the story. This was never about revenge. Angela didn't build her life to prove Kevin wrong. She built it because she understood something he never did. Your value doesn't decrease because someone fails to see it. It only becomes dangerous when you start believing them. Today, Angela owns multiple commercial properties across 2 cities. She operates quietly, strategically, on her own terms. Kevin still runs his business. He still works in the same office. He still pays rent in the building she owns. They do not speak, and that silence now means something very different. That is not distance. That is closure. So here's the question I want to leave you with. In those 4 minutes, what would you have done? Because that is where this story really lives. Not in the betrayal, not in the success, but in the decision that came in between. Let me know in the comments what you would have done. And if this story made you think differently, subscribe to Behind the Lie and turn on the notification bell. Because the next story we're bringing you might make you question everything you thought you understood.